Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before our meetings begin, we will have an invocation offered by Commissioner Brady, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Today, O God, we ask for your Spirit to be with us in our midst, that you might stir up in us the gifts that we need to lead this city with integrity and focus on the task at hand. Give us the courage to consider all those who are affected by the decisions that we make, and help us to remember those who labor on our behalf, our employees and our vendors, and all those whose livelihood is connected to the city of Sandusky. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Presser, you call the roll, please.
Ms. Lloyd? Here. Mr. Brady?
Here.
Ms. Twine? Here. Mr. Murray?
Yes, here.
Bull?
Here.
Mr. Lockhart? Here. Mr. Wadding?
Here.
Commissioners have before you the minutes of our meeting of May 14th. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes of the May 14th meeting and dispense with the formal reading.
Second.
A motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, motion be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. Ms. Twine, I understand that you have a proclamation to present.
Yes, sir. Yes, indeed. This time of year, we always remind everybody to use their seat belts. So I have a click it or ticket proclamation to read. Whereas the safety and security of the citizens of the city of Sandusky and the surrounding areas are vitally important, and whereas a large percentage of our citizens regularly drive or ride in motor vehicles on our roadways, and whereas the use of seat belts in passenger vehicles saved an estimated 14,688 lives in 2016, and whereas regular seat belt use is the single most effective way to reduce injuries and fatalities in motor vehicle crashes, and whereas the use of seat belts is supported by the laws of the city of Sandusky, and whereas May 21st through June 3rd, 2018 has been selected as the National Click It or Ticket Mobilization Enforcement Period, and whereas across the country, law enforcement officers will actively be participating in the mobilization to ensure all motor vehicle occupants are buckled up day and night to reduce the risk of injury and death caused in traffic crashes, and whereas increased enforcement of seatbelt laws coupled with publicity has proven to be an effective method to increase seatbelt use rates and decrease fatalities. Now I therefore, Naomi Twine, member of the Sandusky City Commission, do hereby proclaim and announce May 21st through June 3rd, 2018 as the Click It or Ticket Mobilization Weeks in the city of Sandusky, and urge all citizens to always wear seat belts when driving or riding on our roadways, dated this 29th day of May, 2018.
Thank you, Ms. Twine. Thank you, Chief. Turn to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address the commission on any of our regular agenda items, please step to the microphone, give us your name and address, and share with us your thoughts, questions, and we will endeavor to answer any of those questions in the course of the discussion regarding the particular pieces of legislation. And as I indicated to the commissioners earlier today, item 6 is being removed from the agenda. It wasn't quite ready, and we'll probably take that up at the next meeting, I believe. Anyone wishing to address the commission on our regular agenda items? If not, then would someone care to make a motion to accept the communications from staff recommending various pieces of legislation?
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, the motion be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. We turn to the consent agenda. First, commissioners, are there any items which anyone wishes to have placed on the regular agenda? If not, then Mrs. Cresser, would you present the consent agenda, please?
Yes, Mr. President. Item A is for 4 liquor permit transfers. First is a D5A and D6 from Cedar Fair LP to Millennium Operations LLC, doing business at Bay, 2001 to 2003 Cleveland Road. A C1 and C2 permit from Cedar Fair LP to Millennium Operations LLC, doing business as Lighthouse Point Store, 1 Cedar Point Drive. D5A and D6 permits from Cedar Fair LP and TGI Fridays to Millennium Operations LLC, doing business as Surf Lounge and TGI Fridays at 1 Cedar Point Drive. And a C1, C2, and D6 permit from Cedar Fair LP to Millennium Operations LLC, doing business as the Breakers Express Store, 1201 Cedar Point Drive. Item B is for a new C1 liquor permit for Soda Sopa LLC, doing business as Sip and Spin at 151 East Market Street. Item C is for electric service for the city's largest accounts with First Energy Solutions. Item D is a grant application to the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative for Sandusky runoff. Item E is an amendment to an ordinance for a truck purchase. It's an additional $3,000 cost. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kreuzer. Commissioners, would someone care to make a motion regarding our consent agenda items, please?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the consent agenda and declaring that all ordinances and/or resolutions as drafted and presented to the City Commission under the consent agenda shall take effect in accordance with the section reflected in the ordinances and/or resolutions A through E, whether it be in accordance with Section 13 or 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion? Nice work, staff. A lot of good savings in there and other initiatives, applications for great grant programs. So we don't, your work does not go unnoticed or unappreciated, but since there's no objection, we're just going to go right ahead. Mr. Kreuzer, would you poll the commissioners on the motion?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
And now on the ordinances and resolutions, please.
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Those ordinances and resolutions are adopted. Mr. Kreuzer, would you present item number 1, please?
Yes, item number 1 is a second reading of an ordinance amending Part 1 Administrative Code, Title 9 Taxation, Chapter 193 Transient Occupancy Tax of the codified ordinances of the City of Sandusky in the manner and way specifically set forth here and below.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine?
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the second reading.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Kreuzer, would you poll the commissioners on the ordinance, please?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 2, please.
Item 2 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to accept an entitlement grant in the amount of $719,873 total community development block grant funds for the program year of July 1, 2018 through June 30, 2019, and to submit to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development a fiscal year 2018 one-year action plan, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Blanca, I see you back there, and I know you presented at the hearing that we recently held. Is there anything that you wish to add?
It's pulling up right now.
Yeah.
Or commissioners, do you have any questions or comments?
Somebody told me something crazy.
Did make one small change to the action plan, and it was only in the public facilities category. We did take that down from 725,000 to 648,000 because we did spend some of the anticipated carryover this year. So it was just some carryover money that we thought we'd have next year that that we spent this year. So that's the only difference.
Okay, thank you. Additional questions or comments? Mrs. Kreuzer, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Yes. Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady? Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 3, please.
Item 3 is an ordinance declaring that certain real property owned by the city as part of the land reutilization program identified as parcel number 57-00924.000, located at 1812 First Street, is no longer needed for any municipal purpose, and authorizing the execution of a purchase agreement with respect to that real property, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners, on the motion?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray? Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 4, please.
Item number 4 is an ordinance authorizing and directing the city manager to enter into a contract with Ed Verdew and Company LLC of Sandusky, Ohio for the CDBG fiscal year 2017 demolition project number 2, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Ms. Lasko, keep it up.
Appreciate it.
A couple more dilapidated buildings and outbuildings to be taken down. Unless there are other comments, Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 5, please.
Item 5 is an ordinance authorizing and approving a grant in the amount of $15,000 through the Small Business Assistance Grant Program to Heaven Fund 2 LLC in relation to the property located at 101 East Water Street, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brady.
I will abstain from voting on this issue as this LLC has spent money with my company in the past and perhaps may spend some dollars in the future, but I would appreciate the opportunity to comment regarding this legislation after the vote is taken.
Mr. Lasko, would you present this piece of legislation, please?
Yes, Mr. President, members of the commission, and I'll first acknowledge Mr. Dawson Foster is in the audience. Mr. Dave Beer is not present with us currently. I think we're all generally familiar with the track record of Mr. Foster and Mr. Beer with their downtown investments, first with Daly's Pub in 1998, and most recently with the renovation of Shore House Tavern in 2015. These two gentlemen recently purchased the property at 101 East Water Street, which formerly has housed Brass Pelican, Water Street Bar and Grill, and most recently the Leaking Boot. They are looking at sort of their next endeavor downtown, which is a project called Landmark Kitchen and Bar. What they are planning to do is about a $350,000 to $400,000 acquisition and renovation of that space, which will include removing the brewing area and hood system, new flooring, removing some wall coverings to expose some of the original brickwork, new paint, lighting, replacement of the bar, and all new furniture throughout. Once completed, the project is anticipated to employ 15 full-time equivalent positions and have 150,000 additional payroll to the city of Sandusky. This project did come to the Economic Development Incentive Committee in May, and that committee unanimously approved grant assistance of $15,000 through the Small Business Assistance Program, which would be provided to the applicants on a reimbursable basis when the project is done. We have also put a deadline on the project being completed by no later than September 30th, 2018. Probably much sooner than that.
Thank you, Mr. Lasko. Commissioners, questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Poole.
just like to thank Mr. Beer and Mr. Foster for their continued support of downtown. They have significant investment in our downtown and continue to have faith in us, and really appreciate their work.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I just want to thank Mr. Foster and Mr. Beer for all the work that they've put in, and also know that Lainey Beer and Julie Barnes Foster has put a lot of time in as well. So they've contributed so much to the downtown area and been very supportive of everything that's going on. So we really appreciate that.
Additional questions or comments? This is easy to support. These are smart operators with a proven track record. They've made investments in the city before the current renaissance, if you will, got started. And we appreciate that and your continued investment, so thank you. Additional questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Same.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Abstain.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. As indicated, item 6 has been pulled from the agenda. Would you present item 7, please?
Item 7 is an ordinance adopting amendment number 1 to ordinance number 18-066 passed by the City Commission on March 26, 2018, making general appropriations for the fiscal year 2018 and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Soloway, would you give us an overview of what we're considering here tonight, please?
Yeah, basically what we're doing is amending the budget for some of the previous actions that the city commission has taken. A lot of times it's timing issues where we couldn't get some of these budget numbers in the original budget. And what we decided to do a few years ago is just to come to the commission basically every month or every other month with any budget adjustments that happen throughout the year. That way everything can be very transparent and can be forthcoming about what's going on financially. So that's really all this is. It's no different than what we did the last couple of years. So hopefully these may eventually be consent agenda items as the year goes along, but certainly if they're regular agenda items, we could always talk about them. So the majority of the stuff here are projects, vehicle purchases, some transit grant software stuff that was approved, I think, at the last meeting. So it's things that's already kind of across the table for a vote.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Soloway. Commissioners, questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Waddington?
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. Item number 8, please.
Item 8, the first ordinance is approving and authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Huron to provide routine maintenance, service, and repairs for the City of Huron's fire department vehicles beginning January 1, 2018 through December 31, 2018, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Twine.
I move for the adoption of 8A ordinance under the suspension of the rules in full accordance with Section 14 of the City Charter.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Klein, you want to give us an overview? We've been done this for a little while, and this is, I think, really quite a tribute to the folks who work in Fleet.
Sir, through you, Mr. President, this is, the agreement with Huron's been in place since 2010, and the one with Margaretta has been in place since 2012. These agreements allow city staff in the fleet maintenance department to maintain vehicles, and the city will get reimbursed when that maintenance is done for time and materials. This agreement is just basically an extension of those with a cost increase from $64 to $75 for labor. So the cost for the time and materials is still included in this agreement. It extends through 2018 with an option for 2019 as well. And we are making sure that we continue with the operation of only working on the vehicles when staff has available time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Klein. It's been pointed out that the agreement is from January 1
Yes.
of 2018, but we've been operating under the old agreement up until this point in time, I assume.
We've been billing based on the last rates from the previous agreement through today.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, additional questions or comments? Mr. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on motion in connection with 8A?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
Now on the ordinance?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. 8B, please.
8B is an ordinance approving and authorizing the execution of an intergovernmental agreement with Margaretta Township to provide routine maintenance service and repairs for Margaretta Township's fire department vehicles beginning January 1, 2018 through December 31, 2018, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington?
I move for the adoption, I move for the adoption of this ordinance, 8B, under suspension of rules in full accordance to Section 14, City Charter.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Mr. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. That's a nice but a quiet example of intergovernmental cooperation and regionalization, Mr. Klein. So hats off to you and the folks at Margaretta and City of Huron for pulling our resources that way. Would you present item number 9, please?
Item number 9 is a resolution declaring the necessity for the city to proceed with the proposed 2018 tree and stump removal project, approving the specifications and engineer's estimate of cost thereof, and directing the city manager to advertise for and receive bids in relation thereto, and declaring that this resolution shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd?
I move for the adoption of this resolution under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
It's been a motion and second. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Poole?
I guess I'm looking for some input from staff perhaps, but the 67 abandoned tree stumps, I would actually like to see this divided into 2 separate programs. Simply because tree stump removal is a basic, simple process that probably there's small businesses in Sandusky that could do this, as opposed to having all these trees and stumps all bundled together, which eliminates some likely local businesses that might be able to do some of this work. Additionally, it drags it out because you could be doing it simultaneously. It's just my thought.
Mr. Klein? Could you respond to Mr. Poole's concerns?
Yeah, this is, the spec for this project, in the past, all we've done is the tree removals. We haven't done a separate stump removal process. But the spec for the project is written up so that the stump removal is included with the tree removal. And the thought of having the stumps included in this one is that it would be a cost savings because the stump removal contractor is going to come in. Sometimes it's subcontracted out during construction. Other times it's done by the prime contractor. And depending on who we get, the prime contractor, if they're doing this work, they'll bring in the equipment, pay for mobilization once. We're not going to pay for mobilization twice. When they remove the trees, they'll remove those stumps and continue on with the other stumps for the remainder of the project. It's just the stump removal portion. So this was grouped together for a cost savings approach to the project. And if a prime contractor does want to coordinate with a subcontractor, they're obviously more than welcome to do that.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Poole.
just, I understand the intention, and since this is already in the works, we won't make an issue with it, but when we do, if we come into this again, I'm gonna, other than the fact they said he's intending to save money, there's no evidence that there's actually going to be a savings of money by doing this. The main contractor, when he subs, is gonna wanna make money on the subs work just as well, and I'm not sure that it's accurate, but it's not something I'm in a position to argue with about at this time. I think if we end up with a local tree removal service, then maybe we've accomplished the same, but I'd like to see our money that's spent in Sandusky spent on folks locally that also spend their money here as opposed to some big contractor from out of town. And I'll vote yes for this, but that's where I'm at on it. I don't see any reason why we can't break this down. It's just a little extra work asking for it to be bid separately. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? I think Mr. Poole's point is well taken. And going forward, we just need to keep that in mind so that we can break things up for local contractors to bid. I think that's a pretty good example of one where it might work. So thank you for bringing that to the fore. Additional questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the resolution?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That resolution is adopted. Item number 10, please.
Item 10 is an ordinance approving the new fee schedule as recommended by the Cemetery Board for the Oakland Cemetery and Memorial Park Rules and Regulations, and declaring that this ordinance shall take immediate effect in accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Commissioners, having heard this communication, how do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lloyd.
I move for the adoption of this ordinance under the suspension of the rules and in full accordance with Section 14 of the city charter.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. All these price increases seem to come with, obviously they do come with a recommendation of the cemetery board after considering other local cemeteries. And we appreciate their diligence and continue to look at those kinds of issues and bring forward appropriate adjustments in prices from time to time. Are there any additional questions or comments? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion, please?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
And now on the ordinance?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Twine?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted, and we turn now to Mr. Wobser for your manager's report, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'll start with the donations. First, a donation of $915 from the Erie County Community Foundation to be used for improvements at Dowk Park. I'd ask for a motion to accept that.
So moved.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved with our thanks to the foundation.
Thank you. Second, a donation of 14 flags for Veterans Park was received from the Erie County Veterans Service Commission. That donation is valued at $347. I'd ask for a motion to accept that donation.
Second.
Been a motion and second. Discussion. Without objection, the motion will be approved. And hearing no objection, the motion is approved. By the way, the park looked beautiful over the weekend for the Memorial Day ceremony there.
Moving on to the police department, congratulations to Sergeant Brad Wilson, who recently completed the 3-week police executive leadership college courses and graduated on May 18th from the 73rd PELC session. In the fire department, firefighters have recently participated in various community activities, including Whiteman Weaver Kids Fest, Cove Street Neighborhood Cleanup, and the CAC Street Carnival, and hosted seniors from St. Mary's and students from Ontario and Adams Junior High. For finance is requesting a public hearing to be set at the Monday, June 25th 2018 City Commission meeting regarding the 2019 tax budget. This is required per the Ohio Revised Code, Section 5705.30.
Would someone care to make such a motion, please?
Second.
There's been a motion and second. Discussion? Without objection, motion be approved. Hearing no objection, the motion is approved, and that hearing is set.
Thank you. The next scheduled Finance Committee meeting is Friday, June 22nd at 7:45 a.m. In Public Works, the city, in partnership with Sandusky City Schools, has arranged for every fifth grade student to visit Ohio State's Stone Lab on Gibraltar Island. This educational program provides hands-on learning related to harmful algal blooms, nutrient loadings, and stormwater management practices. Staff felt this was a unique opportunity to help meet the Ohio EPA requirement of providing public education related to stormwater to 50% of the population. Several city staff will be serving as chaperones to interact with students, including myself, Director Klein, and Commissioner Brady. Also, the city received a letter from the Erie County Health Department informing us that they will respond to all standing water complaints by treating potentially problematic mosquito areas with larvicide. Please call the Environmental Health Division with any questions at 419-626-5623. Also, the splash pads at Huron Park and Lions Park were made operational in time for Memorial Day weekend. I took my kids on Friday night to the Lions Park splash pad. There were probably 30 kids around there splashing around 6 o'clock at night. So I know with a hot weekend, people are very thankful for it. Starting June 11th, West Monroe at Garland will be closed to all through traffic for 21 days, including at night, to allow for the replacement of a water line, sewer line, and roadway repairs. Emergency vehicles only will be permitted to pass. Alternate travel routes should be made. Also, a friendly reminder that construction season is upon us. To help keep construction workers safe, we ask that you please be patient when traveling through work zones and be mindful of all construction signs. Please refer to the city's website, which offers an updated map for all road closures and detours. We're all excited about the amount of public improvements being made in the city, but we do know when each project individually is being constructed, it can cause inconveniences, and we'll do our best to minimize those inconveniences as we make long-term improvements to the city. For the Department of Community Development, the U.S. Geological Survey is currently undertaking a site selection process in the Huron and Sandusky area to develop office space for staffing and docking space for the research vessel. They need 5,500 rental square feet and have space on site to dock the vessel. The USGS requested interested landowners to quickly turn around expressions of potential interest due on May 28th, which was yesterday. The city submitted 2 sites, the grass pad in front of the Transient Marina on Shoreline Drive and the excess parking spaces at the Shelby Street Boat Launch. The Transient Marina initial plan envisioned a construction project to exist in the green space, and the excess parking lot at Shelby Street would accommodate building construction. The USGS would be looking to lease for minimally 10 years, but prefers a 20-year lease. The city will know in the next few months if these or other sites will be explored further by USGS. This is something that came up really quickly. We're actually approached by a local developer that was also putting forward another site. And just for the opportunity to be able to have sites considered, the federal folks have some pretty tight restrictions. We put forward these sites, but there's a long community process on these, so either the developer, ourselves, or USGS could determine that these aren't the most appropriate sites, but we wanted to stay in the game, I guess, with as many sites as possible. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
And to be clear, that any lease along those lines could have to
Need
come back to
approval
the
from the
commission.
city commission, exactly. This was just so that the developer on our behalf could submit these sites as potential sites for consideration. Also, the planning department, the regular planning commission meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, June 27th at 4:30 p.m. in the first floor conference room. And the regular Board of Zoning Appeals meeting is scheduled for Thursday, June 21st, the normal meeting time of 4:30 p.m., also in the first floor conference room. Recreation, the 2018 Summer Fun Guide is now available on the city's website and is going to be mailed to everyone in the 44870 zip code. I know those who have had a chance to see it online, et cetera, are very excited. It'll be another great addition of that, what has become an annual, hotly anticipated item in everyone's mailbox. Also, registration forms are now available for the Summer Playground Program, which begins June 18th and runs through August 2nd. The program will take place in Huron Park, Farwell Park, and Foxborough Park. Please call 419-626-5888 for more info. And then finally, the second annual Bayfront Bazaar and Brew begins on June 13th at the Sandusky Bay Pavilion from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. in partnership with the North Coast Young Professionals and the city's Recreation Department. This family-friendly event will feature handmade goods, live music, food trucks, and access to area brewed craft beer. That concludes my remarks for this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, questions or comments? If not, then we will turn to any items of old business. Any items of new business?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Waddington.
I walked through downtown last night, and they did a heck of a job cleaning it up after the Ohio Bike Week. I was impressed how clean it was. So I'd pass something on to Mr. Ernst. That was well done.
Looked good this morning, that's for
Yes,
sure.
it did. Thank you.
We do need to set a public hearing for July 2nd for proposed zoning amendment of 3 parcels on 3rd Street and 1 parcel on 4th Street from single-family residential to commercial recreation. And I wonder if someone would care to make that motion.
Second.
Then a motion and second. Discussion? Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners?
Mr. President,
Sorry.
I don't have the calendar in front of me, but I had a note that it was July 9th, so if I could just check the calendar real quick.
Did I say, what date did
You
I
said the
say?
2nd.
Oh, I need the next strongest pair of reading glasses, I'm afraid. Would whoever made the motion care to amend it to make it July 9th, which is what I was supposed to read?
So moved.
Second.
July 2nd. It's a motion and second. Thank you for catching that, Ms. Byington.
Vote on the amendment now.
We need to vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed. The amendment is made. And any comments on the motion itself? If not, then Mrs. Cresser, would you poll the commissioners on the motion?
Ms. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Brady?
Yes.
Ms. Vaughn?
Yes.
Mr. Murray?
Yes.
Mr. Poole?
Yes.
Mr. Lockhart?
Yes.
Mr. Waddington?
That hearing is set. Any other items of new business?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Lockhart.
One sort of public announcement. Everybody knows about Carrington Arts Gallery. And Marcia Carrington sent this over to make an announcement about, it's a special gallery opening from I want to say critically acclaimed artist coming in from California. It's called Stories of African American Threads of My Family, Their Journeys Toward Freedom and the Abolitionists. This art show opens up June 8th, and it starts from 6 to 9 p.m. She wanted to make sure that everybody mentioned this. This is a show that she's been really looking forward to, so I hope that everybody can show up for Carrington Arts. It's always a great show, and I know most of the commissioners always go too, so if you could attend, June 8th. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Ms. Lockhart. Any other items of new or old business? Not then, we turn to audience participation. Anyone wishing to address the commission on any item of city business, please step to the microphone, give us your name and address, and share with us your thoughts, please.
Catherine Carter, 5309 Columbus Avenue. I agree with Mr. Waddington. A couple of years ago, I came back from Lorain County, and I was going to run downtown and get something to eat, and everybody was gone already. And you wouldn't have known that a few hours earlier that there were thousands of motorcycles in this town. Everything was spotless. There was one stage left at Jackson Street. That was it. It looked good. The complaints I heard this year were mostly the staging on Wednesday of big trucks all over town waiting for their turn to get into Jackson Street parking lot because they're putting the stage up. And they were wondering, the people I talked to today were wondering if there was some sort of system of staging people at Battery Park or something like that, get them all lined up, and they already know what spot they're gonna be in, so move them in there as they can, because there were people sitting down Shoreline all day in the heat, just waiting to get in there. Another comment was, a lot of people were saying that they heard this is gonna be in Toledo next year. Now, I thought the city had a contract till 21.
It's out there ways, yeah.
And so there was a lot of people commenting that they heard it was gonna be in Toledo next year, so they were concerned about that. There's a lot of comments about the smoking ban, and a lot of things from, that's ridiculous, to this isn't a dictatorship. Then it got worse. But we were wondering, several people were wondering how many citations were written for smoking in this last week. And if it's, now that all the tourists are gone, if the locals have to go back to the law. And will this smoking ban be lifted for the 4th of July and the tall ships and other attractions that are big attractions meant to bring a lot of people into town? So there's still questions about the smoking ban and who it really affects. You ask if there's any old business. A lot of people were here, there were 50 people here for the smoking ban, 100 people here for Jackson Street pier problems. People ask questions and they don't understand why they can't get an answer to their question. And then they don't understand why they should come down. And I was wondering if I ask a question or someone else here asks a question tonight, why can't that question be answered under old business at the next meeting? That way, if they're watching TV, they can get an answer to the questions that they were interested in at the last meeting. Because they're all hanging around in the parking lot going, how comes I can't get my questions answered? Other than that, that's our biggest concern was who's allowed to smoke now and who's not allowed to smoke. And we're all just hoping it ends up here next year because it turned out to be a lot of fun. Other than the big blast of rain that came through, I didn't hear any other complaints. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. I'm sure Steve Ernst, if there are some logistical changes that would improve that traffic flow, will come to the city and suggest those. And the chief and Mr. Klein would be more than happy to accommodate them if they can. I have heard nothing about the Bike Week moving to any other city. We do have a contract for quite some time. I don't remember when that expires, but it's a good number of years out. And the chief indicated at the last meeting that he was not going to enforce the smoking ban until there's signage up, and there isn't signage up. So, okay. Anyone else wishing to address the commission? Then would someone care to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
We stand adjourned.